is a man?
Hello indie game fans, Metroidvanias, you love them, I love them, so let's begin with Astalon Tears of the Earth, one that does buck the purest definition of the genre since it does feature multiple playable characters but does have an interconnected world filled with secrets, which is the most important part of such games. This has fantastic 8-bit pixel art and comes to us from the developer of Castle in the Darkness, which is excellent as well. One of my personal favourites is Guacamelee Super Turbo Championship Edition since it has a luchador as the main character with a fantastically done Mexican theme. The dimension switching aspect is very neat, used both in combat and platforming, where this is probably the perfect introduction for beginners to the genre. I always make it a point to highlight Yoku's Island Express since the self-styled Pinballvania showcases the creativity of indie developers. Rather than being a combat-focused platformer, this instead has you playing as a postman, having to uncover the secrets of the island, all while being tied to a boulder. There are various upgrades and puzzles, not to mention Metroidvania-style ability unlocks, which enables you to access new areas. And while not the perfect game by any means, I really appreciate what the developers have done and look forward to their next title. Another amazing example of innovation in games is The Messenger, one that, on the surface, looks like another retro entry inspired by 8 and 16-bit classics having a neat dimension switching mechanic, but then reveals itself to be so much more. We are looking at footage for the free DLC titled Picnic Panic, which you should totally play if you missed it, but the original is truly an exceptional game with some of the best funny writing in addition to side-scrolling action. In 2015, it was a full 13 years without a new 2D Metroid game in sight, so indie developers had to take things into their own hands, with the excellent Axiom Verge being worth a play. The sci-fi setting is very reminiscent of Metroid, but the developer put its own spin on this by introducing glitches in the world which you're able to use to your advantage. The weapon variety here is impressive and is more than meets the eye, and while its sequel is available, I still lean towards this game. Speaking of Metroid, I do want to give a very special mention to Metroid Dread that isn't on the list since it isn't indie, but good on Nintendo and thanks John Cena.
John Cena!
Also, if you were expecting to see Ori on this list, they are quite a large studio so it doesn't count, and also somehow, Japanese developer Team Ladybug at WSS Playground managed to get their hands on the Record of Lodoss War IP, an 80s anime series that was basically Japanese Dungeons & Dragons, where Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth is quite the tribute to Symphony of the Night. In fact, people do say it is too similar, even down to the backdash animation, but it was a full 24 years between these games and I think it's an excellent tribute. As with Castlevania-style games, you can grind and be supremely overpowered if you choose to do so, with some of the best pixel art and great enemy designs. Steamworld Dig 2 is the perfect example of a sequel done right, being bigger and better than the original in every way, while still retaining the core of what makes this game great. The very compelling gameplay loop involves going underground and digging for resources to sell back in town, which you can then use to upgrade your kit to enable you to mine more quickly or to carry more the next time around. Add to that varied and interesting biomes and fun upgrades and you have one of the best. A game which may turn some people off with the aesthetic is Rabi-Ribi, since it has an anime bunny girl as the protagonist, but don't be fooled, this is one of the more challenging titles in the space. This comes to us from a Taiwanese developer, but the Japanese Toho influence is clear since this game incorporates bullet hell elements into the boss fights, filling the screen with projectiles that you need to avoid. There are an impressive number of power-ups and upgrades, which, in addition to the non-linearity of the world, is an excellent Metroidvania game even though it doesn't fit in that dark fantasy mold that this genre is known for, so if you have not played this, be sure to give it a go. I just talked about Infernax in my recap of the best of 2022 so far, so suffice to say, I really like this game, so for more detailed thoughts, be sure to watch the video linked in the top right. Perhaps the most gory and brutal game right now is Blasphemous, one that has you beheading, impaling and disemboweling enemies while you yourself try to avoid a similar horrible fate. This draws upon the Catholic faith for inspiration in designs and themes, most notably of penance and atonement, coming to us from Spanish developer The Game Kitchen, who are showcasing parts of their culture. As a Metroidvania, this is one of the more content-rich experiences out there, with a massive map to explore, with the developers releasing quite a number of free content updates which added a lot to the game, such as in the case of Stir of Dawn, which we are looking at here. Free DLC and indie developers seem to go hand in hand, which is something that should be commended. An awesome series is Momodora, where Reverie Under the Moonlight is technically the 4th entry, and most interestingly, has you playing as a priestess wielding a leaf as her main weapon. You are seeking an audience with the Queen to get help in order to destroy a great evil that is threatening all life in the kingdom, having to battle through hordes of twisted monsters and bosses in order to do so. This almost feels like a Souls-like game in terms of combat and overall atmosphere, where the boss fights are truly a highlight in this game. There is a sequel in the works which I'm very excited about, so fingers crossed that will be the greatest entry in the series, but for now, this will have to do. Similarly, I also talked about Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Night in my recent video on grimdark titles, link in the top right, where this twisted fairy tale world needs to be experienced if you love Metroidvanias. The art in this is top-notch with impressive enemies and animations, where our heroine has to rely on the power of fallen knights in order to cleanse the land, being a modern classic. There has been an influx of Toho games on Steam in recent years, most of which are vertical shoot-em-ups that the series is known for, but a select few have branched out and are of interest, such as Toho Luna Knights. Our heroine, Sakuya, is a maid that throws knives with the ability to freeze time, with an impressive graze system that rewards aggressive play. Like its shoot-em-up inspirations, getting close to but not being hit by projectiles rewards you with health and magic, so you need to barely avoid enemy attacks and also use the time stop ability to great effect. This will come in handy dealing with the bullet hell bosses, but it's a tightly designed game that is fantastic. This man right here is Koji Igarashi, beloved producer and director of Castlevania games, and after shenanigans with publisher Konami, set up his own studio and kickstarted Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is basically going back to its roots with a very classically designed one of these. This is very similar to the Symphony of the Night era of Castlevania games with the RPG, leveling and equipment systems, and while I much prefer pixel art, the 2.5D look did grow on me as well. Honestly, this game could have been mighty number 9 with how poorly development was going, but the gaming gods and the hard work of the team gave us another classic, with rumours of a sequel in the works which I cannot wait to see. Of course, Hollow Knight is still king, more on that linked above, taking the number 1 spot. Watch this video for upcoming Metroidvania games and I will see you after the jump.